Hello and welcome back to this European SchoolNet Academy course on games in schools. Hopefully you've already completed Module 1 and you found yourself here in Module 2. Module 2 is about using games for thematic learning. You should have already completed the module on why use computer games, and then there are 4 other modules still to complete in order to complete the Academy course. Module 3 is around learning games, Module 4 is what can we learn from games, Module 5 is on designing games, and Module 6, why is it important to teach about games. As I've already said, in this one we're looking at how do we use games to promote thematic learning. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about that in a minute and explore actually what we mean by those terms, and then I'm going to take you through a couple of examples that I've seen recently being deployed in schools. The last unit in this module, I'll be sharing some further resources and examples with you. And just like all of the other units and modules, there'll be some little tasks to complete as you go along. Some of them you might choose to do for interest, and the task at the end of the unit we ask you to do because it involves some collaborative work with your colleagues that are also taking part in this European SchoolNet Academy course. So let's make a start, shall we? So this is using games for thematic learning. Sometimes we call this contextual hubs, and I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. I guess the first thing to say is don't get too bogged down by technology. Hopefully, as a teacher, you'll already be familiar with the concepts of project-based learning or thematic learning. This is where, we do a project over a period of time, but it's real and it's relevant for the child. Sometimes we describe it as real-life projects. Sometimes these projects have got a theme. Perhaps we use the Olympic Games as a context for learning. The idea behind contextual hubs is we take this a little bit further. It's fundamentally a computer games project, is a project, and it's also thematic, but the game is the thing that provides the theme. Maybe I could illustrate it better with an example. Let's take a game for the Microsoft Kinect Adventures. It ships with all of the consoles. You could play the Kinect Adventures game and really enjoy it, but if you were thinking about how you might use it in a more creative way as a skilled teacher, you could also use it for thematic learning, right? And you could also use it as a context for learning. If you're familiar with the game, you'll know that one of the mini games within it is called 20,000 Leagues that you have to try and fix by moving yourself around. Now, some people might say that's got nothing to do with education, apart from actually the physical activity that's involved. But of course, for a creative teacher, you might say, well, we'll start off by playing 20,000 Leagues, and we'll use that as a context for teaching about seas and oceans. For example, children could research the wildlife underwater. They could research the science behind buoyancy or the science behind how ships float. They might even go online and they might even follow some ships around the world using GPS tracking systems. The only thing that's really holding us back is our imagination. Of course, some other children in the class, they might prefer the other mini game called Space Pop. Again, has it got much to do with education? Well, maybe not, unless you're a creative thinker and you think to yourself, well, actually, I could use this as a context for teaching about space. Perhaps children could research the planets. Perhaps I could use a virtual telescope. Perhaps I could imagine that I've landed on a planet and I have to do some creative writing about what it would be like here. What did it feel like? What would it smell like? Again, the only thing that's holding us back is our imagination. I did a resource a couple of years ago, a bit more on using Kinect Adventures and thinking about how it could be linked to other parts of the curriculum. And one of the things that you might do after you finish watching this video is to go and explore the course, right? Just to get some ideas of the types of things that have been done using very, very simple games. So in a nutshell, what am I saying? We're saying that thematic learning and project-based learning is no real difference to using games as a context for learning here, this whole idea of a contextual hub. The only difference I would say is that gameplay is an important part of the theme, an important part of the project. It's not something that's done as a bolt-on at the end of the week or in golden time as a reward activity. Gameplay has to be fundamental to everything that you're doing around this kind of thematic project-based approach. So, whole idea then of contextual hubs is that they do involve gameplay, but we're using things as a theme. Now, one of the problems with educational games is that lots of educational games are pretty bad, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to think about how might we be able to use commercially available off-the-shelf games, which are highly engaging because they've got multi-million-pound budgets, and how might we be able to combine that, the engagement of the game, how do we combine that with the engagement and the drive and the professionalism of the classroom teacher to create these individual and powerful learning environments. And so we have to start thinking a little bit differently. we have to start thinking as we walk around the shops, as we go onto Amazon, how might we use some of these games to develop thematic learning projects, contextual hub projects within our classroom. Luckily for us, this is a new concept. There are lots and lots of examples all around Europe where people have been doing this already. And what you can see now on the screen are some of the titles that I've seen being used. These range from games from the Nintendo DS or 3DS, for Wii, for the PlayStation games, Xbox games, and also increasingly other little games, narrative-driven games that we sometimes see on tablet computers, such as an iPad or an Android tablet. So we're going to be exploring how some of these games work. So in the next unit, I'm going to be talking about Wally and how I've seen that successfully deployed, and then we're going to be having a think about Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. We haven't really got to worry about whether it's a Winter Olympics or a Summer Olympics. The idea is how do we take the context of the game, create this contextual hub, and do a really, really long project and thematic learning project on the use of this game. Something for you just to think about, well, before you go on to the next module, is this. Have a think about some computer games that you've played, bearing in mind what I said about Connected Ventures, and think about how you might be able to use different aspects of that game to springboard into parts of your curriculum. You also might want to explore that Connected Ventures resource I was telling you about. I'll put a link to it on the online resource which accompanies this video. See you next time.